Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Another good day for journalism and for journalists. When you read this portrait of our Attorney General talking with intel folks overseas about intel folks on the home team, that's not a great look, is it?
If you want to be an isolated country with no allies and not see what's coming, this is the way to handle your business. How confusing would it be for any other country around the world right now to have an attorney general come to you when you're normally dealing with the CIA or envoys or the DNI in terms of international intelligence, in terms of sharing information? It has to be baffling to them. And there is a complete erosion of trust, whether it's Australia we've talked about today, Ukraine, all of our Five Eyes partners, Germany, the UK, they all maybe helped or supplied information during the Mueller report and the Mueller investigation. What is the purpose of this? And what really is shocking is the government seems to be run by basically three people: Pompeo, Barr, and Giuliani, who I can't figure out is even part of the government or not.
Without portfolio.
Without portfolio. So it's very confusing, I think, to anybody that's ever interacted with the U.S. government before from overseas to understand who is in charge, who they're supposed to listen to. And remember, on the ground, we have State Department folks, we have Department of Defense, we have intel agencies, we've got defense and state contractors, development aid. They all are in different reporting chains. And it seems as if no one really knows what the other part of this government is doing and why the Attorney General isn't back home enforcing the laws, instead running around the world coordinating intelligence activities or investigating intelligence activities.
Barrett Berger, why is it not witness intimidation to hear the president talk about the whistleblower and remind the folks watching tonight the protections whistleblowers have under the law?
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually is witness intimidation. I mean, that is the whole reason that we have these type of whistleblower protections, because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to come forward to report some sort of misconduct or criminality, but it also takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of faith in the system that you will have laws that will protect you, that you won't be retaliated against, that you won't have the President of the United States actively trying to reveal who you are. I mean, if you think about it, given sort of the vitriol that the president has expressed so publicly about what the whistleblower has done, if this person is outed by the administration, this person would certainly have a bounty on their head. So I think we can't overstate sort of the danger of the president really making these statements, trying to out this person.
Phil Rucker, the president seems preoccupied with the whistleblower and Chairman Schiff, among other things. Yeah. Is this, again, the absence of an overarching strategy?
Well, the overarching strategy at the moment, Brian, is whatever President Trump is thinking in the given hour. There does not seem to be a grand strategy, either from a legal perspective or a public relations perspective, to get him out of this hole and to protect the presidency. And so what he's doing, and we saw this throughout the weekend, is he's lashing out. He's trying to discredit the whistleblower. He's trying to discredit Chairman Schiff. It's notable, by the way, that he's going after Schiff much more intensively than he is going after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's the one last Tuesday who launched these impeachment proceedings. There's a calculation in the White House that Schiff is a more vulnerable target. But the other thing Trump is trying to do is project this narrative that he is somehow being unfairly persecuted, that he's the greatest victim in the history of victims. No president's been treated this way throughout American history, as he claims on Twitter. And he feels this sense of self-pity that he's broadcasting to the world, and that is significant and it's different. We've not seen that before with other presidents who've been staring down impeachment.
Katie Benner, can you remind our viewers of the kinds of professionals inside DOJ? Forgive me, I have this respiratory thing that half of New York seems to have. The kinds of professionals who reside inside DOJ who would take a dim view of Rudy Giuliani's travels as a de facto kind of hovering attorney general, or the actual attorney general's travels on behalf of his boss?
Sure. Taking Giuliani first, I think that both professionals inside of the Justice Department and the State Department would take not only a dim view of what Rudy Giuliani has done, but they would say that it actively hurts them and it makes it harder for them to do their jobs because they also have to interface with foreign leaders, foreign officials, and other law enforcement people. And not knowing what Rudy Giuliani is saying makes it very difficult for them to have credibility, and also they can get caught flat-footed. With regard to Barr, it's very interesting because the Attorney General is trying very hard to make the case that everything he is doing is within the letter of the law and that he is doing it for a valid reason. He wants to know if people acted unlawfully in 2016. And while he makes that claim, it's interesting, I'm starting to hear more and more from career professionals inside of the Justice Department that they don't understand why so much time and energy is being devoted to a review for which we already have other investigations looking at. So we have an Inspector General investigation that should be completed soon, we hope, that should give us some insight into what happened in 2016. And then we, of course, have the Mueller report, which was a very full account of what happened in 2016. So I think people are, one, confused about the Durham review in general, and two, very surprised to see the Attorney General taking such a firm interest and being so active in it.
It is Tuesday, the 1st of October of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, fair warning to you all, there is roasted corn in the Tarrytown Chowder. That is how it becomes Tarrytown Chowder. Well, looks like Bill Barr is roaming Europe right now. I'm pretty sure he's at an Italian monastery with some old Opus Dei fascisti. They're all friends. He is Opus Dei, the U.S. chapter. And if you don't know about Opus Dei, it's not quite like calling them the Templars or the Rothschilds. It does border on the kind of conspiracy aspect that the other side seems to be rather addled with. You know, I'm hearing a lot of Rothschild and Templar stuff right now. Illuminati. The Illuminati have made an appearance in these Facebook community threads. And anybody who doesn't even take into consideration the argument is just brainwashed. Yeah. Yeah, I know. We are the ones brainwashed because we won't believe in the Illuminati conspiracy theories. I know. Well, there's no reasoning with them. There's one fellow who purports to be a free thinker, and I agreed. His free thinking is actually free of any reasonable, rational thought. But just accept the most complex conspiracy theory as true because he's looked into it. And it has been so complex, it's taken years for him to figure it out. And he's figured it out. Oh, and did I mention that he's also a hippie? How many right-wing white nationalist hippies are there in Oregon? I don't know. Which makes me wonder, is it Russian active measures? It is part of it, you know. When you can get an Oregon hippie to accept white nationalist BS, Frank Luntz jargon, you know, these hippies are repeating the Frank Luntz jargon of PC culture. Oh, and my favorite, the social justice warrior, SJW. a hippie, accusing people of being social justice warriors. It boggles the mind. It does. And then I have to hear about their meditative practice and how they're earthing. And those of us who are not earthing in their way are really heretics. Well, I belong to one of the oldest cults in the world, the Catholic religion. And I got to tell you, who gets to call who heretics a heretic is usually determined by, what is it? I'm trying to put my finger on it. Power. I think it's called power. And if you think that your idea of earthing, that meditative, contemplative practice is going to take precedent over any others, well, that's fine. This is America. You're free to believe what you want. And I'm even allowing this fellow to believe in the most absurd conspiracy theories. The problem with this is that once they start bringing in the Illuminati and the Templars, it's easy to assign Hillary Clinton as being the devil because of how she handled Benghazi. Oh, and it also causes those people to just accept out of hand the idea of retroactively making communications between State Department staff, low-level employees, all the way up to senior political appointees. All of those communications are now classified as top secret. And all of those people are now being investigated for sharing top secret information and forwarding it to Hillary's server. And people think that that's perfectly okay to do. Just retroactively make all of those mundane little communications top secret, reclassify them as top secret, and then throw those people in jail for being enemies of the state, sharing top secret material. This is what happens in Kafka. Or Kafka, depending on where you're at. Yeah, the Labyrinth? Maybe. Minotaur? Maybe. It is certainly what happens in tin pot banana republics. And because Trump went to a military-themed school, that's what banana republics are. They're military themed, though they do carry the full weight of destructive, violent, deathly power of a military. But without any code of honor. True code. Yeah, there's a code in the warrior class. We don't have to like the fact that there's a warrior class, but there is, among the more, shall we say, evolved, a code of honor. Trump's code of honor might be the code of Muerta. Once you join, you won't get out alive. And if character assassination is how one is done away with in our society, then that's what happens, and that is what is happening. So, he's going after the whistleblower too, which is a felony. Not just obstruction of justice in an impeachment inquiry, but an actual out-and-out criminal felony. But there is a secret OLC memo that says that when there's a white rich boy, a spoiled rich boy who attains the office of the presidency by the help of a hostile foreign power, the rules no longer apply to him with a capital H. Everyone genuflect. Tap your heart 3 times and repeat, America is great. America is great. Okay, we have a cult that is in the seat of power. There's not very many of them, but they sure let us know that they've got the guns and the bullets. And that's another thing I've been hearing too much of. Voting is stupid. We have to go into the streets and fight. Now, this is coming from the right wing. But there is a contingent of folks purportedly to be of the left, but I really think they're more like traitor bots themselves, who are pushing this idea of civil war. Ballots, not bullets, is what makes America great. If you don't love America enough to go and actually do your civic duty, and the thing that you fantasize about is killing other Americans, maybe there should be. Now, if I was poet, philosopher, king, and that was happening in my realm, yes, your guns would be confiscated. And you could try to fight it. It would not go well. But people are so aggrieved that they have to do desperate measures now. And their dear leader has told them that they must. Where he goes, they go. What he attains, they attain. If he cheats on his wife and gets away with it, they get to cheat on their wives and get away with it. Things that they've been fantasizing about for, well, a long time. And now, for the last 3 years, it's been absolute heaven. Absolute. So much so that the President of the United States retweets Robert Jeffers' wish for a violent civil war if Trump is impeached. Well, Mr. Jeffers, you heretic, the impeachment process has already begun. I know. They have to vote on articles. The inquiry is still impeachment. Because it does sort of crack me up also how little American civics this side knows. How little. They just have no idea. And that was by design also. When civics was no longer required to get from one class to the next. You know, like from 7th to 8th grade or 8th grade to 9th grade. You had to pass a test on the Constitution. And somewhere along the line, the Birchers said that was like left-wing indoctrination. Teaching people about American civics is left-wing indoctrination. Tells you everything you need to know about the fascisti meeting in an Italian monastery and doing the rites of Opus Dei. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, Trump claimed victory for creating hundreds of Apple jobs that already existed. Well, why not claim Obama's great gains and then tear apart everything good that Obama did? Trump is about to be frustrated by an IRS whistleblower detailing efforts to influence the agency, and frustrated is just a nice way of putting it. He's effed. And Putin says the United States needs his permission to release his phone conversations with Trump. Yeah, Vladimir Putin is telling us what and how we get to listen to his majestic, godly voice. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a San Francisco tour guide has been charged with being an agent of the Chinese government. Not really a spy, but a bagman. And Ireland dismissed the UK Brexit border customs clearance center's proposal. And well, they should. Why not partition Ireland all over again? Why not? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link right there next to the social media scroll. So do check that out. Kelly Lincoln monitors that for us, and thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is our link to our Patreon page. And do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your recurring Patreon nudge allows us to not only pay the bills, but as those of you who have heard this many times before recently, we are now in even more dire need of getting this newish machinery that we've been talking to people about, except it looks like it's going to be both of the workhorses that have been working so terribly hard for half of these last 8 years. Wow. And so thank you for your generosity. We are paying our bills, and we are putting aside some money, but it looks like we're going to have to dip into our wallets. That's what we do here. But you are our biggest contributor, and we would be unable to do any of this without you. So thank you for allowing us to resist, as the founders originally intended so many decades ago. Almost an eon now. Wow. Okay, I guess maybe eons are closer to 1,000 years, but we'll get there. We'll get there. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I put that out there on social media for your social media perusal pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and really wherever fine podcasts can be found mixed in with all the rest of us. All the rest. All right, let's take a look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. It comes our way out of Share Blue Media by the great Oliver Willis. Trump tried to take credit for Apple jobs in Texas, but the company is already in the state. And those jobs were actually recently in question because of Trump's trade war. Great news. Apple announced that it is building its new Mac Pro in Texas, Trump wrote yesterday, Monday. This means hundreds of American jobs in Austin and for suppliers across the country. Apple has been producing the Mac Pro computer in Austin since 2013. After Trump launched his trade war with China, Apple's products were affected, and the company floated the idea of moving production of the Mac Pro to China to avoid Trump's tariffs. The company sought a waiver on the tariffs, and Trump insisted that would not happen. Apple will not be given tariff waiver or relief for Mac Pro parts that are made in China. Make them in USA. No tariffs, he wrote in July. Just 2 months later, Trump gave in. Apple Inc. gained U.S. approval to avoid tariffs on Chinese imports for the upcoming Mac Pro computer, even though Donald Trump indicated the company's waiver request would be rejected, Bloomberg reported on September 19th. A few days later, citing Trump's concession, Apple said they would keep the Mac Pro production in Texas. Trump likes to make announcements about companies purportedly bringing jobs to the U.S. based on his persuasion and sales ability. But then these announcements are either completely fabricated or have nothing to do with Trump or his policies. Last June, Trump claimed that U.S. Steel was opening up 6 major facilities in the United States, but the company soon told the Washington Post no such openings were planned. Just this March, GM announced that it would be closing a plant in Lordstown, Ohio, despite Trump's claim on the campaign trail that he would bring back those jobs. The company also noted that it has lost over $1 billion thanks to the trade war. Over 716,000 plant workers across the country have lost their jobs under Trump despite his boast to the contrary. Apple jobs nearly went overseas, thanks in part to Trump. But it took a major concession from him to keep those jobs in America. Now, amidst a torrent of bad news, he wants to take credit for something he didn't do. Oliver Willis of Share Blue Media also brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A second whistleblower could be waiting in the wings to further frustrate Donald Trump, even as he continues to fume about another who exposed his troubling phone call with Ukraine's president earlier this month. And now we find out Pompeo was on that call too. What if Pompeo's the whistleblower? Nah. Representative Richard Neal, Democrat of Maryland, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, said on Friday that he has been discussing with attorneys working in the House of Representatives about releasing the details of the second complaint. The complaint purportedly comes from a federal employee and focuses on allegations of impropriety in the IRS's mandatory audit of Trump's tax returns, Talking Points memo noted on Monday. That was yesterday. In a brief filed with the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia in August, the Ways and Means Committee said that a federal employee had approached them with evidence of possible misconduct, along with inappropriate efforts to influence an audit of Trump. In another brief filed last week, the committee referred to the absence of safeguards to protect IRS employees and the audit process from improper influence. The IRS complaint appears to echo concerns outlined in the first whistleblower complaint, which helped to trigger an impeachment inquiry into Trump. In the original whistleblower complaint, concerns were raised about Trump's attempt to solicit political dirt from the Ukraine on his 2020 election rival, former Vice President Joe Biden. Well, assumptive. Presumptive. Because I think it could be somebody else. They just like Joe. They think they can beat up Joe. It also detailed the White House's effort to hide the phone call by moving a memorandum of his readout to a code word system intended to restrict access to only a handful of people, and none of them would have oversight over anything they did. An OLC memo that they can pull out of their back pocket says it right here. Right here. Tampering with call readouts or failing to file them with the official record may constitute a violation of the Presidential Records Act. And Samantha Vinograd noted in a political column this week, and she's a CNN national security analyst, the IRS complaint reportedly highlights similar concerns relating to Trump's taxes. Trump has insisted, without evidence, that his taxes are under audit by the IRS, refusing to disclose them or cooperate with congressional efforts to obtain them. The complaint reportedly alleges that there were inappropriate attempts to influence that audit, though it's not yet clear what those attempts may have been or who may be involved. I don't know. Did Trump send over one of his strong-arm guys to threaten a few legs being broken? Did he flash some money, some ruble laundered dollars, converted into dollars under their nose, maybe? You know this guy gets political dirt or any kind of information he can get on arrival. Do you think that with the power of the presidency, he wouldn't look into the employee records and the actual tax records of the employees working in that division to find out what their weaknesses might be so he could do a little bit of compromat on them? Do you think that a guy who did that in private life, if he had the powers he has now, that he would not do that? Trump is the first president in 4 decades from either major party not to release his taxes. Reporting on Trump's returns has shown him overstating his net worth and allegedly violating tax law. When they had the majority in the House, Republicans repeatedly refused to pursue Trump's returns. Democrats have requested the return since taking over the House, but Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin has so far refused those requests. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and why wouldn't they be anonymous? This is a story about Vlad, after all. The Kremlin said yesterday, Monday, that transcripts of calls between Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin can only be published by mutual agreement. Oh, really? What about when you went to your TV stations and went ahead and just divulged what you had talked with Donnie about? What about that time? Did you ask for mutual agreement on that? Probably did, and Don gave it to him. The White House has severely restricted the distribution of memos detailing Trump's calls with foreign leaders, including Putin. Asked about Congress's push for the publication of Putin-Trump calls, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov responded that the publication is possible only on mutual accord. If we receive some signals from the U.S., we will consider it, he said in a conference call with reporters. Peskov noted that the diplomatic practice doesn't envisage such publications, adding that the issue is U.S. internal business. A rough transcript of Trump's calls with Ukrainian President Zelensky, which was released by the White House, is now the focus of a U.S. impeachment probe. It showed Trump urging Ukraine to look into his Democratic political rival, Joe Biden. According to a whistleblower complaint about that call, the Trump administration initially kept the conversation with Zelensky hidden by moving it to a highly restricted, highly classified electronic system meant for sensitive intelligence matters. But what about her emails? Well, she was cleared, and now they meaning Trump's administration, has reclassified all of her emails top secret. It alleges the Trump administration moved other conversations into the same system in order to protect Trump from potentially damaging information coming out. Subsequent press reports indicated the Trump administration tried to conceal conversations between Trump and Putin and may have moved summaries of their calls into the system. You know, Trump confiscated all the translator notes, everything. The Russians got to take what they take, and they put it right on their television stations. But now we have to ask Vlad for permission. Putin and his Lieutenants derided Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Kremlin interference in the 2016 presidential election, casting it as a failure and shrugging off Mueller's exposure of evidence of Russian meddling in the vote. Mueller found that there was not enough evidence to establish a criminal conspiracy between Trump's campaign and Russia, but he did charge 12 Russian military intelligence officers with breaking into Democratic Party headquarters and the email accounts of officials with Hillary Clinton's campaign. Sounds like the modern-day plumbers get their marching orders in a contract written in Cyrillic. Well, we better get on with our break, and when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Suzanne Bard. The human brain is remarkably adaptable, constantly being shaped by life experience. A striking example is that in blind people, the brain's visual cortex is repurposed for auditory tasks, such as detecting motion and pinpointing where a sound is coming from. But its adopted functions could be even more complex.
Then the question is, well, how much can this part of the brain change its function in people who are born blind?
Johns Hopkins cognitive neuroscientist Marina Bedney. She and her team had blind and sighted volunteers listen to audio clips from entertaining movies while undergoing functional MRI scans of their brains. The goal was to find out if, among blind people, the visual cortex is activated consistently for complex auditory tasks.
So we take brain activity in one person and we correlate it to brain activity in another person. It gives you a way to directly compare how similar the processing of two brains is when they're listening to a given stimulus. And so that can tell us, for example, whether the visual cortices of different blind people are doing the same thing at the same time.
The result?
You get massive synchrony over something like 65% of the occipital lobe, which is a lot of cortical territory.
In other words, in blind participants, most areas of the visual cortex were activated at the same time by the movie audio. But the visual cortices of sighted people didn't show consistent activation. What's more, the similarities became much less pronounced among the blind participants when the movie clips were scrambled and became meaningless. That finding suggests the visual cortex isn't just acting like a simple sound processor.
And that's important because it means that this brain region likely went from being a low-level sensory area to behaving like a higher cognitive area, which suggests a very extreme level of reorganization and plasticity.
The study appears in the Journal of Neuroscience. Further research will investigate other ways in which life experiences may profoundly shape cognitive function, from reading Braille to programming computers. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Suzanne Bard.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. cholesterol management, and S, smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs. For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
In 2012 in the United States, about 317,000 motor vehicle crashes involved a large truck. 26,000 truck drivers and their passengers were injured in these crashes, and about 700 died. Trucker safety requires an alert, buckled-up, experienced driver with a reliable vehicle and a strong employer safety program. Seatbelts are the most effective way to prevent an injury or death in a motor vehicle crash, but in 2013, 1 in 6 drivers of large trucks didn't use their seatbelts. Employers can help truck drivers stay safe by committing to driver safety programs at the highest level of leadership, establishing and enforcing driver safety policies, including requiring everyone in the truck to buckle up, and addressing factors that contribute to crashes, such as drowsy and distracted driving. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
A new level of despair has spread among tens of thousands of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border who have been seeking refuge, in legal terms asylum, in the United States. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And that's the beginning of a recent Associated Press report which goes on to explain the reason. Quote, the Trump administration has begun enforcing radical new restrictions on who qualifies for asylum, end quote, and who doesn't. And who doesn't is any refugee who has passed through a third country while fleeing for their lives on their way to the U.S. border, who hasn't applied for and been denied asylum in that country, which is to say, as a practical matter, that no refugee from Central America need apply for asylum. Let's return to the AP article. Quote, the United States is the only option, said Dunia Romero, a 31-year-old Honduran, who had tears in her eyes as she spoke at a shelter in Tijuana. She said she packed her bags and fled her homeland with her 2 boys, ages 7 and 11, after learning that her abusive ex-husband, a powerful gang leader, was going to have her killed. Under this administration's rule, this woman and her children cannot even be considered for asylum, at least not unless and until the Supreme Court strikes down the Trump administration's rule as violative of either national or international law. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that the Pattern Makers League of North America merged with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Have you ever heard of the Pattern Makers Union? The Pattern Makers can trace their history all the way back to 1877, where 13 men met in Philadelphia to form their union. Highly skilled craftsmen, the Pattern Makers created molds and models. These cast molds were an essential step in the industrial manufacturing process. The earliest cause of the pattern makers was the 9-hour workday. Over the years, the pattern makers fought for the health and safety of their workers in an ever-changing industry. Like many industrial workers, ebbs and flows in the economy hit their union hard. Their membership peaked during productive industrial times, including during World War II. The pattern makers issued a lively bi-monthly journal. The journal related the news of their union, but also reported on major legal decisions and events impacting the national labor movement. Also in the pages of the journal, the pattern makers related their efforts to support other workers in metal trades. By 1959, the pattern makers had more than 15,000 members. During the 1960 space race, it was the pattern makers who played an important role. Their molds and models were an essential step in building spacecraft and other aeronautical equipment. But in the 1970s, the pattern makers' numbers began to decline. Finally, they decided, as many unions have, to merge with another union. There are many untold stories of unions whose work kept the great machine of American industry running. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
As if last week wasn't one for the record books, buckle in, because there's a whole lot of breaking going on. Breaking news, that is. We begin with the Wall Street Journal, reporting Monday that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was on that July 25th phone call between Donald Trump and the president of Ukraine when Trump asked Ukrainian President Zelensky to do him a favor and look into one of his political rivals, Joe Biden. Despite Pompeo's evasive answers, he's gone on the record denying any knowledge about the call. We now know that Pompeo was actually listening in. And to make matters worse for the Secretary of State, just last week, on Sunday, September 22nd, on ABC's This Week, Mike Pompeo, first in his class at West Point, graduate of Harvard Law School, well, he played dumb.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that President Trump pressed the president of Ukraine 8 times to work with Rudy Giuliani to investigate Joe Biden's son. What do you know about those conversations?
So you just gave me a report about a high-seek whistleblower campaign, none of which I've seen.
Are you confident that none of your staff did anything improper in this whole situation?
To the best of my knowledge, from what I've seen so far, each of the actions that were undertaken by State Department officials was entirely appropriate.
Dumb? Not so much. Lying? Obviously. But Pompeo's not the only one in the president's inner circle caught up in this web of lies. Enter Donald Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. On Monday, the House Intelligence, Oversight, and Foreign Affairs Committees subpoenaed Giuliani for documents, including text messages, phone records, other communications, all to be turned over by October 15th. Rudy, of course, went on Fox to beat his chest, claiming he hasn't decided yet whether or not he'll cooperate. He did add, though, that the only way he'd testify was with Trump's approval. But if it's a day ending in Y, you know there's more. And this time, it's U.S. Attorney General William Barr implicated as being waist-deep in the muck. The New York Times this time reporting that Donald Trump pushed the Australian Prime Minister during another recent phone call to help Attorney General Bill Barr gather information on the origins of the Mueller investigation. Seriously. Remember this?
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation about the Mueller report. The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges, how it started, the beginnings of the investigation, how it started.
Oh, yeah, the oranges of the Mueller investigation. And Australia? Well, think back. In December of 2017, the New York Times reported exactly where it all began. And yes, Australia was involved. Here's the report. Quote, during a night of heavy drinking at an upscale London bar in May 2016, George Papadopoulos, a young foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign, made a startling revelation to Australia's top diplomat in Britain. Russia had political dirt on Hillary Clinton. About 3 weeks earlier, Papadopoulos had been told that Moscow had thousands of emails that would embarrass Mrs. Clinton, apparently stolen in an effort to try to damage her campaign. Exactly how much Papadopoulos said that night at the Kensington wine rooms with the Australian Alexander Downer is unclear. But 2 months later, when leaked Democratic emails began appearing online, Australian officials passed the information about Papadopoulos to their American counterparts. This, according to 4 current and former American and foreign officials with direct knowledge of the Australians' role. Now, back to today. NBC News has also confirmed the story, although a Justice Department official called Trump's request an ask. Semantics much? The New York Times wrote, quote, the White House curbed access to a transcript of the call, which the president made at Mr. Barr's request, to a small group of aides. FBI counterintelligence investigators began examining any Trump ties to Russia's 2016 election interference after Australian officials told the Bureau that Russian intermediaries had made overtures to Trump advisors about releasing politically damaging information about Hillary Clinton. Got that? Yeah. As with Trump's call with the president of Ukraine, his discussion with Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison shows the president using high-level diplomacy to advance his personal political interests. What more do you need to know? But wait, there's more. It's not only Australia. The Washington Post also reported Monday that Attorney General Bill Barr has been holding meetings overseas with lots of foreign officials, including British intelligence officials and Italian government officials, asking them to help in Trump's efforts to investigate the Russia investigation. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. I'll be back with my show at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and guest hosting the broadcast at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, trying our best to keep you up to date right here on the Progressive Voices Network.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to be a little bit warmer today. Looks like we'll be in the mid-60s to the mid to upper 60s. Abundant sunshine, and winds will be light and variable. Clear skies tonight with an overnight low in the upper 30s to low 40s. And then tomorrow, highs in the upper 60s, low 70s. Winds will remain light and variable.
Looks like barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.13 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 95%. And it looks like we will have to abbreviate our weather report since the Weather Underground has not loaded all the pertinent information from around the world. But that is weather from around the world, such as it is really just weather from Southern Oregon, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Dan Whitcomb and Katie Paul bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A San Francisco tour guide has been charged with an agent of the Chinese government accused of picking up U.S. national security secrets from furtive locations and delivering them cloaking dagger style to Beijing, federal prosecutors said yesterday, Monday. Zhezhui Peng, also known as Edward Peng, was arrested on Friday in the San Francisco suburb of Hayward, California, and was denied bail during an initial court appearance by U.S. magistrate judge on that same day, federal prosecutors said at a Monday morning press conference. The conduct charged in this case alleges a combination of age-old spycraft and modern technology, U.S. Attorney David Anderson said. Defendant Edward Peng is charged with executing dead drops, delivering payments, and personally carrying to Beijing secure digital cards containing classified information related to national security of the United States. Peng, age 56, is not accused of stealing secrets from the U.S. government himself, but is charged with acting as a courier who, between October of 2015 and June of 2018, picked up classified information from the dead drops in Oakland and Newark, California, and also Columbus, Georgia, then delivering them to his handlers from the Ministry of State Security in Beijing.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Britain is proposing to set up customs clearance centers on both sides of the Irish border after Brexit, Irish national broadcaster RTE reported on Monday yesterday, an idea Ireland's foreign minister quickly dismissed as a non-starter. The British proposal would place clearance centers, effectively customs posts, between 5 to 10 miles back from on each side of the border. It was reported that the details came from technical papers, or so-called non-papers, sent from London to Brussels, of which RTE had seen the extracts. Citing sources, the Daily Telegraph reported the clearance centers were part of new proposals Boris Johnson is expected to present to EU officials this week. Yes, let's just partition Ireland all over again. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. In fact, we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pas fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.